And welcome back to episode number 30. We're at 30, wow, of Raise the Banner podcast. I'm one of your two co hosts for now, Makator here with JR Mott. JR's back. Ben should be joining us shortly, but he's running a little bit behind. JR, how you doing? How's been your last couple weeks you've missed?
It's pretty good. Work schedule's just a little bit off right now, so I don't really have a set schedule. So I'm gonna be on when I'm able to be on, and when I'm not,
It
sorry.
is what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, hey, we're gonna jump right into it. There's a lot of, I guess, Patriots talk right now for obviously good reasons. Free agency is here. Free agency is underway, and we've seen, I guess you could call it a lackluster start for the Patriots. And I don't even want to say lackluster. I would probably say just a little bit of underwhelming start. Just because we were hoping for a little bit more fireworks. Doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that things have been bad. Uh, we're now a weekend. What are your overall thoughts, JR, on what's your overall thoughts on
There's
how the first
been
week of free agency has
all
gone?
right. It. So I'm having to pull everything up because while a lot of these players were being signed, I was like at work, so I didn't really get to react as everybody else was, or like see all the news. So finally got caught up. I mean, I was able to see the Antonio Gibson signing when it happened, but and all and some couple of additions on defense. But I think overall they did a good job. They did what they could. I mean, they had a lot. Still have a lot of money, over 50 million in cap space, but they did what they needed to. They said, I mean, Gerard Mayo said stuff like, "Oh, we got some cash to burn and everything like that." Walked it back. And Elliot Wolf said they're going to weaponize the offense during the combine, I believe. But the fact of the matter is that they did what they needed to do with the players that they needed to retain, like bringing back Kendrick Bourne, bringing back Hunter Henry. Um, that was huge. Re-signing Mike Onwenu was probably their best and biggest move of free agency. They signed KJ Osborne yesterday to a 1-year deal up to $6 million. Um, so they did a good job with what they did. I think there could have been more that they did, but they're gonna build in the draft. Like the whole entire Wolf motto, whether it's Ron or Elliott, when Ron was with the Packers, it was draft and develop. Develop your play. Just draft and develop, and that's what the plan seems to be. With this team, offense and defense alike.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty straightforward. I mean, things are in a big picture. Would we have liked Kelvin Ridley? Yes. I think we were all like interested in that addition. He ended up going for a pretty high rate, above I think what most people expected. And the Patriots, at least reportedly, made a strong offer to him. Uh, that tells me that they're at least trying and they are interested in adding a premier talent. Uh, that being said, trying only goes so far. Uh, as things currently stand, yeah, and one who's been the best addition by far. And by addition, I mean obviously bringing him back. He seems to be slotting in at right tackle, which is the right spot. But offensively, I mean, they need to do more, especially if they plan on adding, um, Drake May or Jane Daniels in the draft. I don't think that the goal for them from the start was how things currently have panned out a little bit. And I really still feel like that they're not going to be like they're still not kind of planning to just draft a guy at 34, let's say a wide receiver at 34, and then go into the season with that. I think they're still hoping to kind of make a bigger splash, whether that's a trade for one of like the top guys available, or maybe they go and they turn and they add like a second tier wide receiver or an older vet that has a few years left to the mix that are at least a little bit more reliable. Uh, but as a whole, I mean it was a fine start. Nothing that's been amazing, but I mean I'm not over here like upset about or furious about how things have played out. Ben, how about you? Where are you at with all this?
For the most part, I would say I know Pro Football Focus came out with like to the date offense off-season grades. Um, I would say they're like solidly in the B range. They did what they needed to do. They brought back key pieces of their own that were certainly necessary to hold on to. Obviously, you guys already touched on it. Mike Onwenu being number one. Duggar still hasn't signed his transition tag. I would assume at this point we're hopefully coming to the end of kind of the waiting period. I feel like if somebody really wanted to offer him like decent money to pry him away from New England, they would have done it by now. I don't know. Maybe I'm just misreading that, but that's kind of the impression I get. He arguably one of the top safeties available on the market, and I would expect him to sign the transition tag. I don't know if anybody's going to give him a contract that he wants to sign. Whether he wants to force the Patriots to do it or not, I don't think he's going to get anything that he would want to sign that would trigger us to decide whether we have to match or not, right? I was disappointed that they got to the finish line with Ridley and just couldn't quite get there. I thought the price was at like the top of his market. I don't think I would have extended myself to 24-25 million a year for him. But he obviously had certain priorities. I think he goes to a better situation overall with the Titans versus here. There's still obviously some question marks the Pats have. I'd like them to go out and make a splash to a degree, right? I just don't carte blanche say, go trade, a second round draft pick and then, sign T. Higgins to a 5-year, 4 or 5 year, $25 million a year extension. I would be, I'd be okay with it. I don't know how gung ho I would be just because the team does have needs, yes. And I think big picture, in a vacuum, if you're going to ask me, would I rather have T. Higgins at 34 plus 4 or 5 years at 100 to 125 million dollars versus a potential wide receiver one on a rookie deal? In a vacuum, yeah, you take the potential rookie wide receiver on a rookie deal because it's not a ton of money, and if it doesn't work out, then it's not a huge financial loss, right? It's a rookie deal. Overall, I think nothing's really gotten me super excited. I mean, on Wino, I was like, yeah, like good job, but nothing's really been jaw dropping. Like, oh my god, they went out and did this. And I think
Jared, look up.
I think that's a little bit in terms of. I think that's due to a little bit of the backlash from Ridley not signing here. I think that left a sour taste in some people's mouths. And
I think people expected fireworks, and I don't know what's up with like Boston, coaches and GMs, but they like to make and owners. They like to make these comments to bring people's hopes up, and then don't seemingly fall through on them.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting like an offensive, meaning spending offensively versus defensively, but I wasn't expecting like an offensive spending spree like what we did on defense 4 years ago, whenever they brought in Judon and Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith. I mean, obviously they brought in two marquee tight end options on the market. I didn't expect them to do that, but it feels like I would feel better if they had signed Ridley. I guess let me put it that way. I think we'd be feeling like we're in a better spot because if you have Ridley and a rookie wide receiver, you're setting up whoever it is you take at 3, you're maximizing that success. I know Keenan Allen doesn't really excite a ton of people. He's older. He's coming off a couple of injury seasons. He's in the last year of his deal. Didn't have to give up too much for him, but then it's like, okay, well, depending on how long it takes for the rookie to get ready, is Keenan Allen, like, are you willing to, like, re-sign Keenan Allen so that he's here when your rookie takes over? Because I think in an ideal world, you're not rushing whoever it is. Unless they blow doors in camp and they're like head and shoulders better than Brissett. I think you go into the season with Brissett as your one, and then you bring whether it's May or Daniels along slowly. But that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, we'll jump into the whole third pick and what to do there and how to approach that whole situation. I do want to touch up on a few specific kind of storylines that have gone around Patriots fans the last week or so, and one of them that's kind of been discussed. I think it was the Ridley kind of situation really brought up is New England an attractive destination in terms of we looking through into the current setup of the organization. Elliott Wolf, is Gerard Mayo attractive? Is things like the millionaire taxes, is things like the cost of living, the weather, how much are those playing factors? And finally, to add on to it, do you think the team is more attractive to free agents right now than it was, let's say, 12 months from now? We'll start with you, JR.
I don't think it's attractive at all to come here right now. Mostly just because it's a losing team. They suck. They don't really. I mean, they have a direction they're moving forward with, but I just don't think players want to come to this team right now because we don't have our quarterback situation figured out. It's not really a really competitive roster. I mean, the defense is really, really good still, but the offense is still needing a lot of work. I mean, yeah, you brought in AVP and everything like that, but there's still a lot of work that needs to happen. The cost of living comes into it. The millionaire tax comes into it. Yeah, we offered Calvin Ridley a really luxurious offer, but at the end of the day, Tennessee, along with Florida, kind of the same. It's like a puddle jump from Jacksonville to Nashville. There's no state tax, everything like that. So he's going to be making a lot more money than he would be here. And do I think it's attractive now compared to 12 months from now? I don't know. You got to see how the season goes because they could be really good or they could be better.
No, I more meant from now and then 12 months prior. So like last off season, they obviously had a disastrous 2022 season. Matt Patricia was there. Matt Patricia was gone, so Bill O'Brien was coming in. Like, do you see the team as more or less attractive now than it was 12 months ago?
Less attractive.
Okay, and why is that? Is it the Belichick's not here? Is it more uncertainty?
I think it's just everything. I just think it's everything. What happened with the team? I mean, it's still not as attractive even if Belichick was here. Yeah, I mean, the defensive guys love Bill, but I don't know what to say other than just it's not an attractive destination at the moment. There's no more Tom Brady. Belichick's not here anymore. We don't have the team figured out completely yet. So why would players want to come here other than money? Yeah, but why? Just why?
Fair. Ben, where are you at with all this?
I'm in a similar spot. I'll go a layer deeper, I think. And I'll quote Antonio Gibson. I think that for younger guys playing for younger coaches, I think that means a little something. I don't necessarily think it's a offensive versus defensive thing, right? Like, you look at Bill. Bill is an old school, grumpy old curmudgeon of a man. And, he's not, and not to say that Mayo is the polar opposite, but if you can remember back to his introductory press conference, it was nice to hear, like, for lack of a better term, like what a real human sounds like in front of a microphone in a football setting. Like even, and I don't know if it's an act, but like even during, and I don't have Apple TV, so I can't watch the actual episodes, but of the clips from the Dynasty, you listen to Bill talk, and it's no different than what he was in front of a microphone. So that's just either who he is or it's a persona he's putting on for the media. And I'm sure it's somewhere in between. I don't think he's really like that in the locker room, but to go back to Antonio Gibson, he talked about how it was nice when he had conversations with Gerard Mayo about how welcomed he felt and how, Gerard kind of talked to him and leveled with him, like on a personal level. He talked about how Gerard was playing around with Antonio's kids, and just the way that he carried himself and conducted himself when they met him, made him feel right at home, so to speak. And he was super pleased. Almost sounded like he was kind of surprised. But I think with younger coaches, and not to go down this road, but especially where, African Americans are predominant in the NFL compared to other races, right? So I think that when you have younger people from similar backgrounds and similar cultural beliefs, it's a lot easier to level with those guys, like the D'Amico Ryans, the Gerard Mayos, the Mike Tomlins, the even to an extent, I guess, like the Eric Bieniemys, like the guys who I think that because the age gap and they probably came from similar backgrounds, right? High end football players, played for big time schools, had careers in the league. I think that makes it easier for players to want to come play in certain places that, for money reasons, weather reasons, might be seen as less attractive. I think that if Bill was still here, it would be a lot less of an attractive destination than somebody like a Gerard Mayo. I think Gerard Mayo, the allure of playing for Gerard Mayo appeals differently than the allure of playing for Bill. Like JR said, hit the nail on the head. Defensive guys loved playing for Bill. He carried himself in a certain way that defensive players needed. But when it comes to like younger offensive skill players, Bill I felt like never really related to those guys. The high end skill players that came in, for the most part, tended to be like from other teams. Randy Moss specifically. I thought Randy and Bill, had a different relationship, but like Randy was already established. He was kind of trying to resurrect his career, and he was willing to kind of play ball a little bit. Whereas, the other guys, right? Like, Julian Edelman was not like a loud guy. He wouldn't ruffle feathers. He just came in, he's a late round draft pick. He's like, I'll just do what you need me to do. I think big picture, it's tough to say that it's a destination for certain people, because in order for it to become attractive, because you have a team that's coming off of its worst season since probably 1998, because in 2000 they won 5 games, and that was the last time prior to last year that they had like a true losing season. I know they had like a 7-9 and an 8-9, but like those are they're right around 500 type of deals. The weather here is not super great, so it's really hard to sell somebody on, hey, play here in December and January when it's right around 0, 5, 10 degrees. Oh, and we're probably not going to be playing a football game that matters. You're going to freeze your ass off, and we're probably going to suck. Like those things are less attractive to certain players. But I think the attractiveness of the team from a personnel standpoint is different than what it was 12 months ago. Is really where I was going with that. I think the culture is going to be different. So I think you become less attractive to different types of players, if that makes sense, than the types of guys that Bill was attracting, or the types of guys that were put off by Bill, I think are different than guys who would not be put off by Gerard Mayo.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I think big picture wise, like if you just say 12 months ago to now, and I want to specify this to make sure that the point gets across. Players love to play for Bill for many, many years in a general scheme of things. Obviously, we've heard a ton about Brady and all those things over the years and all that and that relationship. For years and years, players, especially if they wanted to truly win, and defensive players were attracted to play for Belichick. No doubt about it. But since Brady has left, I would say pretty confidently that players right now are more attracted to come play for the Patriots than they did 12 months ago. And I say that simply but for the factor of 12 months ago, like the Patriots were in shambles as a team. Right now, they're at least in the point where, okay, we've hit that bottom, and now we got a new core and we're starting to rise up. And like you mentioned, obviously there's a culture change. Gerard Mayo is, while I think he'll take a lot from what he learned from Belichick, he's gonna be a completely different approach as a
He's
coach.
a player's coach. That's what it is.
And so, I got a little bit of heat for bringing this up, I think a week or two ago, which is why I wanted to talk about it, is if I'm a player right now, and it's like going past obviously, wanting to win and all the other factors we talk about, I would rather be playing for Gerard Mayo than Bill Belichick. And that's not a knock to like what Belichick did. And good Lord, have I had conversations the last couple days of admitting wrongs of Bill Belichick. Like Bill Belichick is an all-time coach. He's one of, if not the greatest coach ever, but that doesn't like deny the fact that the last few years things have not been good. Like I don't think how anybody can look at what he's done the last few years and have said that that is a good job.
Right.
So if you're a free agent, like if he was still here, I would think the team would be less attractive to a free agent, like the
To an
average
offensive free agent, yes, but to a defensive free agent, they'd come.
Yeah, see, that's why I said it was
I
a
mean,
little. That's why I thought it would be a little bit
yes,
different. That
it's a variable thing.
Yeah,
It's different for like defensive versus offensive, but it's not like Mayo. Like, what does Mayo truly bring that's that more attractive to an offensive player? It's not like he's an offensive coach.
see, but I don't think so. I think the way. So as you were talking, I feel like I got a little bit more of a concise way of putting like the difference. Is I think Mayo becomes more attractive than Bill because of how Mayo connects with players on a personal level. People obviously Mayo inside, really really good inside linebackers coach for the last 4 years. Didn't call plays, but very very much involved in the defensive game plan every week. Whereas he can connect with players, and I think that's 100% the reason why Dante Hightower is the inside linebackers coach and not somebody else. Hightower and Mayo were super close. Mayo essentially groomed Hightower to take his role from him. I think Hightower had a little bit of a different skill set. Hightower had, could rush off the edge, but that dominant force on the defense in the second level of the defense, right? But the thing about Bill is people wanted to play for Bill because Bill was a straight shooter, an X's and O's guy, and he knew how to get the most out of his players. Whereas Mayo's going to be the guy that connects with players on a personal level, which is why I think he becomes attractive to different types of players. Whereas he could kind of cross that line between offense and defense, where because Bill was about the X's and O's and about, this is how we do things. That's why I think it would be different. And I think that was why the Patriots kind of struggled with certain types of players bringing him in after Brady left, because then it became, okay, well, now there's no incentive to play with Brady because he's gone. So you saw, that's why you saw certain players wanting to go to Tampa. Gronk unretired and join the Bucs because he wanted to play for Brady, and they gave him a shot to win a title. For the 4 years post Brady, Bill didn't really change. He built teams the same way within reason. And he didn't change up how he coached. And I'm not saying it needed to be drastically different, but that's why I could see where you would say it was a less attractive destination, a year or two ago versus now, because now there's the unknown. Now there's the unknown of like, okay, well, Mayo can connect with me on a personal level, which you learn when you meet him. So that becomes more attractive to certain people. But I think you might lose a little bit of the guys that are looking for that, like motivator, X's and O's, like game planner kind of guy, only because we don't know where Mayo falls in that. Like we knew, like that's how Bill built his teams for 30 years. He was very much an X's and O's game planner, and I think that like Mayo's different in that respect.
Correct. I think also part of it, and this is, I think, one of the biggest parts of it that we haven't really even touched on, is just the generational change. With Belichick's approach, it's obviously old school. So players in the early 2000s, even late 2000s or early 2010s, that they had that mindset and they were okay with like the very hard, tough approach. And we saw as 2010 came along and we progressed through that decade, that we started to see a little bit more, issues, whether it was with Brady or some of these younger guys, the Cassius Marsh guys, like even Gronk had like a lot of issues with Belichick. We talk about what Trent Brown has gone through in his years here. I think that like the last handful of years, like we're seeing a whole new generation of type of players. So like the X's and O's are certainly still need to be there to be a highly successful team, but players aren't like dug deep into that type of stuff the way they used to either. So that's why I'm just like at the point where it's, comparatively to just 12 months ago, and like I said, even like 5-6 years ago, I would argue differently. But like 12 months ago, like this was in a miserably unattractive destination. Miserably unattractive destination.
And to touch on what you said about the X's and O's piece, sorry, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
Yeah, and it's kind of as simple as that. Is like now we got a guy that players can relate with, and yes, we sucked. But now it's like, okay, we're going to build from the ground up here. And I think for a lot of players, free agency is a little bit different because some of these players are older. But like if you're a guy that could be here for the next 3 to 5 years, yeah, like I would be I would be a little bit more enticed to come here than I would if Belichick was here.
Yeah, and I think like that old school X's and O's thing has begun to work less and less, and I think, and JR kind of alluded to this, it's starting to work less and less with those offensive skill players, because you're starting to see more of the, the Tyreek Hill guys coming out in the draft, right? You've got the burners, the Xavier Legette's, Xavier Worthy's, trying to think of some of the, like, who was Brian Thomas Jr.,
Malachi Corley.
I don't know what Malachi Corley, I don't think he ran the 40, did he? I forget if he did, but I was thinking like guys that are just, the X's and O's for certain guys have become less and less important. Like, do you really think that Andy Reid sits down with Tyreek Hill and goes over like routes for Tyreek Hill to get open? No. He says, I want you to be here and you're going to run a crossing route because he's faster than anybody else on the field for the most part on any given Sunday. And I feel like for certain guys who are, especially at the wide receiver position, I feel like every year there's more and more higher end wide receivers. I mean, you could theoretically see 15 wide receivers go in the first 2 rounds of the draft next month. I have nothing to back this up, but I would imagine that would be some kind of record.
Close to it, at least.
Or close to it, right? You go back even 10 years. How many times were we talking about, what year was Julio Jones drafted?
2011, right?
06? No.
No.
Oh, no, he was post. Matt Ryan was 08. So Julio would have been, what, 11?
It's 2011.
So, I mean, Julio Jones was the clear cut, like, there was not a question. He was the number 1 wide receiver. And it was like he was in a tier in and of itself. And then it was everybody else.
Like how Marvin Harrison Jr. is this year.
See, I disagree. I don't think Marvin Harrison is in a class all by himself, because I think the gap between Marvin Harrison and wide receiver number 2, and you could argue who it is. It's it's either Neighbors or a Dunze. I don't think. I mean, I agree. I know.
Yeah. I'm saying it's Neighbors,
right? But for the sake of the argument, right? If you go back to that 2011 draft, I guarantee you the gap between Julio and wide receiver 2 is a lot wider than it is between even in this draft, where Marvin Harrison, I think, he's clear number 1, but the gap between Harrison and Neighbors, I don't think is as wide as it would have been 12 years ago when it was Julio Jones and then somebody else, right?
So absolutely not. The gap is much smaller.
So when you have these skill position players that are coming in and they're just so athletically gifted, and there's more of them every year, and they're getting more and more athletically gifted year in and year out, the X's and O's matter less and less to those guys, because they're going to want to go to a situation where they're like, hey, Xavier Worthy, you just ran a 4.2 140. We just want you to, whoever's across the line, you're going to run a crossing route, or you've got either a post corner or a fly route option. Just beat the guy off the line and get open. Like there's no scheme routes for those guys anymore. I mean, yeah, there's those guys in the draft. Keon Coleman's going to need to run precise routes because he's not a burner. He's got good top end speed, but he ran a 4.5. He ran a 4.5 40, which is
hey. Play speed and game speed is different than running a fucking 40-yard dash.
And I get that, but in terms of like raw athletic ability, I feel like there's more of those guys now, where your offensive skill position players need less and less X's and O's game planning stuff than they did 10, 12 years ago, which I think, again, is why, to come back full circle, that's why Gerard Mayo is attractive to different players than Bill was. I just don't know if it's necessarily more or less attractive than it was a year ago. I just think it's it's different because of who Gerard Mayo is as a coach versus Bill.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll leave it at that. We went a little freaking crazy on this topic, but yeah, let's. We talked about the draft, in what to do at number 3. All signs are pointing towards a quarterback. So I don't want to jump too deep into, I guess, the number 3 pick in general of what Daniels or May. Like, I don't want to talk about that. Just the general concept of this 3rd overall pick that I think people would need to recognize, and I'll go on about a 60-second tangent that will probably turn slightly longer. If the Patriots love the 3rd pick, the guy who is there at 3, the quarterback that is there at 3, whether that's Jaden Daniels or Drake May, you take him. Period. There's nothing else to it. If they love the guy, take the guy. Don't tell me that you can get more value trading back. Don't tell me that, we don't have enough weapons, so, I don't want to bring him into here. You could sit Drake May if you're really that worried about it and still take him. Don't tell me that Marvin Harrison Jr. is the safer pick. Because as we just talked about, the gap between Marvin Harris Jr. and Malik Neighbors is not as big as people think it is. It's just not. Okay, don't tell me Marvin Harrison Jr. is this generational wide receiver. What does that even mean? Okay, what does that even mean? Let me ask you, Ben, what was the record of the Minnesota Vikings this year? I don't know, 7 wins, I think.
I think that proves your point. I don't know. If I had to guess, they were 8 and 9.
Yeah, 8 wins.
7 and 10.
The Cincinnati Bengals. I know they lost Burrow. What were their record? Not that good. What does a generational wide receiver do for you if you don't have a good quarterback? We saw DeAndre Hopkins sit in misery in Houston for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, the ball being thrown by dog shit quarterbacks. He would put up elite numbers and the team would suck. You know when the team stopped sucking? When they got a good quarterback.
Who happens to be a horrible human being.
That's besides the point. But
I thought you were going CJ Stroud because he looks like the guy there.
That's my other example. Nico Collins looked like an absolutely nobody 12 months ago. 12 months ago, Nico Collins looked like what?
Looked like me.
Fringe wide receiver 3, like at best. And then CJ Stroud comes and he puts up a dominating year, and now he looks like a guy that could be a legit possible wide receiver 1 in this league. Like he was that good this year.
So just because we brought him up, and I have the internet at my fingertips, in 2021 as a rookie, Nico Collins had 33 catches for 446 yards and a touchdown. Who was their quarterback in 2021?
Davis Mills.
That's right. Davis Mills. Okay. 2022, 37 catches, 481 yards, 2 touchdowns. Who was their quarterback last year? It wasn't Davis Mills.
Mills
and who was somebody else?
Keenum? Was it Keenum?
Hey, wasn't it Tyrod Taylor in Houston too?
No, he's been in New York the past couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, Davis Mills took over in 21. He didn't start right away.
Davis Webb.
It might have been Taylor. Oh, no. Taylor might have played like a game or 2. But anyways, keep going.
So 2023 with CJ Stroud, 80 receptions, 1,297 yards, 8 touchdowns.
Okay, so 1,308.
So he
what are we doing?
It was Tyrod. He doubled his receptions, more or less, right? 37 to 80, basically doubling his catches. He, for all intents and purposes, was 2.5 times better yardage. 481 to 1297 is probably 2.5 times ish, right? It's not quite 3. And then he quadrupled his touchdown output. That's what a high-end quarterback does for you.
Exactly. And so it's not even like, and I don't think we should make like, we're not discrediting the importance of quality wide receivers. Like, absolutely not. Like, obviously we see that in New England, like for decades. But like, again, we saw Tom Brady, and I know he's the GOAT. We saw him lead bum-ass wide receivers to Super Bowls. We saw Patrick Mahomes.
Rashae Caldwell was his number 1 wide receiver in 06, and they were plays away from a Super Bowl that year.
Yeah. They won a Super Bowl against the Falcons with like a rookie Malcolm Mitchell, Chris Hogan, Danny Amendola, and Julian Edelman.
Hey, don't you take a dump on Julian Edelman.
Gronk missed that game, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he hurt his ankle. No, that was the year the Browns blew out his ACL midway through the season.
Yeah. So again, I don't want to hear, Marvin Harris is a safer pick. Marvin Harris is a safer pick. First of all, this is a loaded wide receiver draft class. Loaded. Okay, the guys that are going to be there at 34 in normal cases would be mid to low first round picks in normal classes. Okay, Malik Neighbors would be the consensus wide receiver 1 in the majority of classes. Like consensus. Rome would probably be a wide receiver 1 in some classes. All right, so clearly a wide receiver, no matter how dominant they are, only goes so far for a team. So if they love a quarterback, if they love Drake May comes up at number 3. Daniels goes 2, May sitting on the board. If they believe he is the franchise quarterback, you do not think otherwise. There's no debate. There's no, what if we trade down? What if we take Marvin Harrison? Whatever, are the weapons there or not? If you love the guy, take the guy and figure it out. If you believe in him, take the guy and make him your goddamn franchise quarterback. I talked about this when people talk about the risk of taking a QB early, and you guys can comment on this too. Do you imagine, think about this scenario 12 months from now. Drake May came up at 3. The Patriots traded the pick to the Minnesota Vikings. It is now January 2025. The Patriots finished 6-11. They don't have a quarterback. And Drake May just won Offensive Rookie of the Year for the Minnesota Vikings after putting up a phenomenal rookie season. Do you know how bad Elliott Wolf will look?
We don't have to worry because he's not going to move off the pick. They're not going to move off the pick, so don't worry.
I know, but just in the general scheme of this conversation, people talk about like trading down is the safer route. Do you know how bad it will look? Do you know what the GM of the Bills is doing that traded back and let the Kansas City Chiefs take Patrick Mahomes? Take a guess of what he's doing right now.
He got fired.
He works for the XFL. The fucking XFL. He's not even in the NFL right now. And he was 5 days after. What is the one big conversation of Jason Licht, whatever his name is, the GM for the Bucks? After Jameis Winston's bum year 4, he traded the 7th pick to move back to 12, and the Bills got Josh Allen. And they lucked out, and he lucked out tremendously to get Brady a year and a half or 2 years later. But everyone remembers
it was
that
the next
trade.
year because Jameis threw 30-30, and it was literally the next season Brady signed there.
He lucked out that he landed Brady because he would not have a job right now if he didn't. I could say that with
I do believe it was more the Glazers that got Brady to Tampa because he's always been very close with that family.
Certainly, but you get what I'm saying.
No, 100% I do.
He traded back from 7 with the Bills, and the Bills took Josh Allen. If he traded back, if Wolf traded back from 3 and got rid of the idea of May, and May goes on to become a star, do you not? It doesn't matter what Wolf does after that. Every Patriots fan's going to remember that. Would be sitting in the dumpster again while the dude wins Offensive Rookie of the Year, and fans would literally, without a doubt in my mind, be calling for his job over that situation alone.
To be fair, Belichick should have been fired after drafting Cole Strange over Trent McDuffie.
Yeah. So, couple things. I do have to walk one thing back, and it was the Julio Jones thing. He wasn't even the first wide receiver taken in that draft, so I do have to walk that back a little bit because clearly he wasn't the consensus number 1 because AJ Green went 4th to Cincinnati.
Oh, that AJ Green was 11. I thought it was 2010.
No, AJ Green was the 4th pick. Julio went 6th, but Here's the interesting
Okay.
thing. The next notable wide receiver that got drafted, the next wide receiver that got drafted in the 2011 draft was a guy by the name of Titus Young. Who's ever heard of him? And the only notable wide receiver taken in the second round was by the Green Bay Packers. Last pick, second round, they took Randall Cobb, who's had a pretty damn good NFL career. So you talk about
Guess who's part of that front office when they took him?
was Elliott Wolf. So you look at the Mahomes Josh Allen situation, right? So if you look at how it played out, so 2017, the Buffalo Bills owned the number 10 overall pick. The Kansas City Chiefs traded up from 27 and also gave them a third round pick. So now I don't know if they parlayed the third rounder into something to get Josh Allen at 7 the following year. But big picture, they ended up with Tre'Davious White and Josh Allen the following year. So yes, they lucked into Josh Allen. Okay.
No, it's a different GM that did that.
Took Josh Allen or
took Josh Allen. The guy, I forget his name, Moley, something like that. He was fired like days after the draft. That 2017 draft, he was fired like days after. At the end of April, he was fired. And then they hired is it Bean?
Brandon
Is that his
Bean?
name? Yeah,
Billy Bean?
Brandon Bean. And he's the one that traded up for Josh Allen.
So for GMs, so
yeah, I mean, I was that's how it played out. I was looking at it earlier.
So 2017. So the website, they're going by GMs, not by whatever. So according to BuffaloBills.com, dated March. Oh no, this is an old article.
The previous GM got fired at the end of April.
I got it right here. So, So Brandon Bean
was hired in May of 2017.
Yeah, it doesn't say when they hired him, but it says 2017 to 2021. Doug Whaley was the GM from 13 to 16. But anyway, so
he got fired at the end, like April 30th, 2017, like days after the draft.
Okay, so
which I don't know why, but
I mean, because they probably were like, why on earth would you trade that pick? And they probably, I don't know. But to kind of come back to what we were talking about, the thing that I would say is, and I'll start with this. If you put Marvin Harrison Jr., as we know him now, on the 2023 New England Patriots, how many more wins do they have?
One.
Like one, maybe two.
Yeah, two max.
Maybe like at best they won 4 games, so they went 4-13. They at best 6-11.
Yeah, I was going to say 6-11.
So yeah, so they're probably they're a 4 or 5 win team probably, right?
Wait, better question. Put Justin Jefferson on the Patriots last year. What's their record?
You could probably make the same argument. You could probably make the same
argument.
Yeah, so I'm saying like
5 or 6 wins.
Talking Jefferson as, what, I won't use Jefferson because he is like the peak. Let's
use Devontae Adams.
You could say Jamar Chase.
Let's put CeeDee Lamb. On the Patriots. Who is, I would say, he's probably consensus top 5 to 7 wide receiver.
5 and 12, maybe 6 and 11.
Exactly.
But if you put a
CJ Stroud.
Yeah, if you put CJ Stroud on this team, that maybe they're like a 7 or an 8 win team. And I mean, they're not a playoff team because I think the offense in Houston and the defense in Houston, well, maybe not the defense. The offense in Houston with CJ Stroud is a better offense than if you put CJ Stroud on the Patriots last year, in my opinion. But I saw this, Matt, I think you posted this on X, and if it's not you, then I apologize for giving you credit because I don't know who to give credit to. It was a talk regarding Marvin Harrison Jr. and taking a quarterback at 34, like fill in the blank, right? It's probably a Bo Nix or a Michael Penix Jr. Not that they're bad players, but would you rather have a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL and the 15th best quarterback, or the inverse, a top 5 quarterback and
Taking quarterback any day of the week.
and a middle of the pack wide receiver. It's
it's what I said.
Even even the 15th best wide receiver, who's probably like T. Higgins, right? Like
that's what I gave an example. What's the gap between, say, CD Lamb and T. Higgins? How much if you took the same teams and just ran a simulation of them being the wide receiver 1 for each team, like the difference is maybe half a win, maybe one total win, and that's being like if you're being fortunate.
Yeah.
If you took, I don't know who's a mid-tier QB. Baker Mayfield. Oh, that was kind of funny. If you took Baker Mayfield,
I would say Baker like circa 2023. Like and Baker's probably like 12.
Yeah, and that's probably
he's probably that was probably better than like your 15th or 16th best quarterback is.
Okay, then Jared Goff.
No, I would say Jared Goff might be above
I would say
Baker right now.
I would say Brock Purdy then, without San Fran. Brock Purdy without the Niners.
I'm trying to think like the perfect mid-tier QB.
Let's just say it's
Russell Wilson.
Yeah, okay. 2023 Russell Wilson. If you took 2023 Russell Wilson, or let's just say who's a consensus. I'm not going to use Pat Mahomes. I don't want just say Josh Allen.
The human turnover.
But still, Josh Allen versus who the hell did we just say?
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
Dangerous.
Yeah. Who? Real quick, just so Russell Wilson, in 2023 had just under 3,100 yards, 26 touchdowns, 8 picks. So that's probably legitimately like the 16th best quarterback in the NFL.
And he's a little bit underrated, and that's a whole at this point, but that's a whole nother discussion. He's becoming a little underrated at this point.
No, don't.
Anybody who goes 26 and 6, is that what you just said? 26 and 6. Anybody who does 26 and 6 in an NFL season,
26 and 8
gets 26 and 8 and gets treated the way that he's been getting treated as a quarterback.
Well, to be fair, they're paying him $250 million.
Yes, yes, but I'm talking about just purely as a NFL quarterback. But anyways,
he gets shit on because the way he acts, dude.
Yes, I know, but I'm saying as a player specifically. Anyways, Josh Allen versus Russell Wilson. You put them on the exact same team. What were the Bills' record last year?
11-6.
11-6. What do the Bills go with Russell Wilson?
Oh God, 7-10.
They're probably a 7, maybe 8 win team.
I say like a top 5 to 7 draft team.
Yeah, if you told me 6 wins, 7 wins, I wouldn't be shocked. Okay, so this just goes back in we're kind of scoping out and making this a little bit.
You said between what? 5 to 7, pick 5 to 7.
I said between picks 5 to 7 if Russell Wilson's there.
The Bears got 7 wins and they're at 9, right? I think.
Yeah. So I mean, I know we're going off a tangent here. The Chargers on the 5th pick, 5 wins, and the 6th and 7th pick are 7 and 11 wins. So yeah, they're a back end of the top 10 draft pick team with Wilson. Whereas with Josh Allen, they were 11-6, and they were a horrible wide right field goal from Tyler Bass away from possibly being in an AFC Championship game.
Yeah, and again, obviously we're wide scoping this right now, but to get back to the main discussion of all this, if your guy is there, if the Patriots look at Drake Allen, oh shit, yeah, I mean kind of Drake Allen.
Drake May. He's not quite that big, but that's roughly that's probably.
If you look at Drake May and the Patriots are sitting there looking at Drake May or Jordan Daniel,
Jordan, right, Matt?
Jaden Daniels. If you're looking at one of those two, and I'm pushing Drake May a little bit because he's my QB2, and I think there's about a 60-40 chance at this moment that Daniels goes too. But anyways, if you're looking at one of them and you're saying we believe this guy is the guy, meaning we think that this guy will be a decade plus guy, franchise guy, potential top 10 at least quarterback in this league. You do not pass that up.
No.
You do not pass it up. Plain and goddamn simple.
What's
you
his
don't
comp?
Pass it up.
What's his comp, Drake May, to you? Drake May is who at his peak?
Josh Allen.
I would say
with a little bit less mobility.
I would say a top 8 quarterback, maybe top 5 quarterback.
Give me a name.
How about this, Matt? Before you answer, how about this? A hybrid of Justin Herbert and Josh Allen.
That's exactly what he is to me. So,
I was trying to think of one specific name, but yeah, those two, like that's what I see in it.
And I think he's he's closer to Herbert in my opinion than he is to Josh Allen, only because Josh Allen is he's a physical force running the ball, and Drake May's not that. He's mobile.
Josh Allen's just a freak of nature and size and everything.
Well, when you're 6'6", 260. You
size of a fucking linebacker.
Yeah, you're a linebacker coming at you.
That's the thing. Like May.
So I'll ask you this:
like 6'4", like 230, something like that.
He's a little smaller, but with similar mobility. He's just not going to truck.
A lot of Josh Allen's strength comes from his lower body.
Yeah. So where I was going with this: if you put Herbert or Josh Allen on the Patriots last year, how many more wins do they have?
I'd say 4 to 6.
I would say the Patriots, if you put Josh Allen on last year's Patriots team, they win at least 8 games.
Okay. So you're talking about
bare minimum.
You're talking about Josh Allen. So
hold on. They win a bare minimum 9 games.
Okay. So with Justin Herbert or Josh Allen, they're a fringe playoff team. Okay. With Justin Jefferson, they're still drafting in the top 10. Like solidly in the top 10. So I think this kind of brings everything into focus, like our big picture point here, that elite wide receivers are great for selling tickets. They don't put wins on the scoreboard the same way that a top-end quarterback is going to do for you.
Jersey sales are cool, but I'd rather wins.
Yeah, right. So and people want to go to New England. Okay. Matt shelling out money every year to be a season ticket holder matters more when you've got meaningful games, when he's like, you know what? Do I really want to throw on 7 layers and go watch the Patriots get their tails kicked and their teeth stuffed in mid-December, late December, early January? Like, dude, no.
It was only like a quarter of the stadium at the Jets game.
And, those
are some of the best and worst memories of my life.
So you go, right, like think back, and you guys might be, I don't know if you're too young to remember this, but the snow game against Miami, I think that was 03 or 04.
I was 6 or 7.
So, I mean, literally, like, Teddy Bruschi had a pick 6 in that game. I want to say it was Jay Feely was the quarterback of the Dolphins back then. And he threw this horrendous pick 6. I mean, like, Teddy Bruschi was standing, like, nobody was within 10 yards of him. And some scrub tight end was running an out route, like, 5 yards away. And Jay Feely was like, hey, that guy's over there, open. And he basically threw it right to Teddy Bruschi. And Bruschi just walks into the end zone. And the entire stadium is just throwing snow in the air and going insane. That's what December and January football used to look like at Gillette. Now it's, I don't want to, now people are like, no, I'll sit at home.
I don't want to drive to Gillette Stadium.
I'll sit at home
freeze.
I'll sit at home. I won't freeze my butt off. And with the money that I would have spent on tickets, I can put out, an insane spread of all this food, have my buddies over. We'll have, a couple of beers that are 4 times less expensive at my house than they are at Gillette Stadium. And, but you got guys like, Matt, I don't know if you still do, but, people like you who shelled out money for season tickets, like, yeah, cool. Like, but nobody wants to see Marvin Harrison running routes in a blizzard in December when the team is,
down 40 points.
4-11.
Oh, pulling up a comment. K-Dog comes in. Marvin Harrison, the only correct choice. Don't get Conan into the third best position. Boy, you don't want to look into who the third best quarterback in past drafts have been. That worked out well. Like what are we doing? Well, Josh Allen was the third quarterback taken.
So
what are we doing?
So hold on. So 2023 NFL draft, who was the third quarterback taken? Who wants to take a guess?
What draft?
last year?
The
CJ
what?
went-
Who was
it
the
went
third?
Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. It wasn't Will
Will
Levis. He
Levis?
went fourth, right? Was he the fourth?
Anthony Richardson.
Oh yeah, Richardson.
Oh yeah, 4.
He
Okay.
looks. I mean, he got hurt, but the first 4 games.
Tough example, right? Okay, the year before that, who was the third quarterback taken in 2022?
2020.
The 2022 NFL draft. I'll give you a hint. There was only one first-round quarterback.
Kenny Pickett was 2022.
First quarterback taken at 20. The third quarterback off the board. Now, granted, we're talking about a much weaker quarterback class. Okay,
Bailey Zappi was the 4th quarterback taken in that
second quarterback in 2022. Desmond Ridder, 74th overall to the Atlanta Falcons. Your third quarterback was Malik Willis.
I don't even look at that
Bailey
draft because that was such an anomaly draft of how weak it
2021 third quarterback Trey Lance. How'd that work out for San Francisco?
Oh yeah, it's not working out.
In a vacuum, let alone if you incorporate the fact that they gave up 2 other first-round picks to move up for him.
Should have been Max.
Yeah, I'm not saying like obviously the third quarterback doesn't automatically end up good. I mean, but like we saw, if you look back at Justin Herbert, he was the third quarterback taken.
What?
No, he wasn't.
Oh, was that Burrow?
Yeah, he was. That was the Burrow draft.
Yeah, that was Burrow, Tua, Herbert. Jordan Love was the 4th quarterback taken. Like I get the concept that like it would be technically the 3rd quarterback taken. First of all, who's to say that the Patriots view him as the 3rd best quarterback? I think a lot of people view.
Well, a lot of people have said they see Jaden Daniels as the number 1 quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, like
they don't see Caleb Williams as number 1.
It just comes down to the simple concept, and I know it's just it obviously if you have to believe in the guy to make the pick. If they believe that Daniels or May is the guy, you do not pass that up. You just don't. Okay, you could trade back, and in the hypothetical, you trade back to and get 11, 23, and let's say a first next year for the Minnesota. Great. You took a left tackle at 11, and you took a wide receiver at 23. Let's say, God forsaken, let's say one of them is a bust. Let's say they take a Donnie Mitchell at 23, and he sucks. Drake May becomes a superstar quarterback, and next year you're left with, I don't know, you got the 9th pick and the 17th pick. And never mind the fact that it's like probably on the weaker end of a QB class.
Where Shedeur Sanders is probably your top quarterback.
Yeah, like, I don't love the idea of, it's going to be weak, ignore, like, they back up, like, they back you in and you'll get a riser or two. No one expected Daniels. No one expected Daniels to rise the way he did 12 months ago, obviously.
Right.
So we could see a riser. But this idea that if like you should trade back because the team's not ready, like those surrounding pieces aren't ready. If you traded back, let's just say you got the stud left tackle. You drafted Fashanu, and he's your stud left tackle at 11. Or, Mims or Latham, whatever his last name is, and he's a stud left tackle. Great. Let's say even if Mitchell is a solid wide receiver too, and if Drake May becomes a stud, you're then in 2025 looking at a weak QB class. No matter what, it's not going to be even close to as strong as this year. And you're looking at probably, let's say the Patriots end up with like another win or two. They're like the 7th or 8th pick, and they get the Vikings who, have the 15th pick. You now have to trade both of them if you want probably like the top QB in this draft, who the top QB in next draft would probably slot into at best QB4 in this draft.
Well, I mean, because next year's class isn't strong. Your top 2 quarterbacks come. Hold up, just
go ahead.
Your top 2 quarterbacks in this next class coming up are Quinn Ewers and Shedeur Sanders. Okay.
Yeah, and I expect risers.
There's going to be risers no matter what every year. Jaden Daniels wasn't expected to be the number 2 pick expected. Okay, he was supposed to go in the 2nd round after what he showed in the 2022 college football season. After what he showed this past year, it rose his stock to top 5, and then he ended up, just because of, as of lately, the last 2 months, he's gone from a potential top, like, back of the top 10 to top 3 pick, okay? So, yes, there's going to be risers, but in response to K-Dot, not all – the third – Jackson – I don't think Jackson Dart's going to be that good in the NFL, to be honest. I think he's probably going to sit at maybe – I don't know. To be honest, I don't think he's going to be as good.
Could they be good? Certainly. Like I'm not going to look at that like next year's class and be one of those guys to say it's going to suck no matter what. Like you have to approach it that it's going to suck. There'll probably be risers, and there'll probably be at least 1 or 2 guys that come here. But this is, and I said this in a previous podcast, and I use this as my state your take moment in that podcast. We are going to see at least 3 quarterbacks from this draft class that are going to be solidified top 15 QBs in this league down the road. And there's a very possible chance that one of those 3 is not one of the top 3s. And that's a different discussion. But these top 3 quarterbacks are one of, if not the strongest top 3 that we've had in years.
This is the strongest quarterback class we've had since 2020.
Yeah, I would say the Herbert, Tua and Burrow was extremely strong.
Jordan Love too.
After that, like it probably goes down the road. Like I would have to go back and look at all the classes. This is an extremely strong class.
And prior to 2021, I was going to say prior to 2021, that draft class was considered strong because it was considered 5 deep. I mean, obviously, we know what that draft class became, right? This is now entering year 4 post that draft class. But I would say 2021 is probably not that far back in terms of pre-draft expectations.
Yeah, so it was strong. But I'll say this. If you took, and it's tough to do this without a little bit of hindsight, but I'm going to try to, like, if we try to be fully objective. If you took those 5 QBs, so Lawrence, Wilson, Lance, Fields, Mack, and then you took these top 4, but top 4 QBs in this class. So Caleb, Daniels, May, and McCarthy. I would very comfortably put all May, Daniels, and Caleb all in the top 4 of that group of those 2 classes. Very comfortably.
So
T-Law, it would probably go Caleb, T-Law, May, Daniels. I didn't personally like Wilson. I will say I did like Trey Lance. But I didn't
like Trey Lance coming out at all. I think he really ruined his development leaving school after 16 months, if that. 14 months.
K-Dot, this comment, like, we would trade for Justin Herbert yesterday if we could get Justin Herbert. Like, come on.
Yes.
Let's not play games.
I mean, we don't have to dive down the rabbit hole. I would say that, yes, he was considered the 5th best quarterback in that draft by most. I would say if you would take, like, what you know of Drake May now compared to Mac Jones post-national championship in that Alabama offense, I bet you'd have a hard time convincing the vast majority of people that May is a better QB prospect. Now, granted, we know now that it was more so the situation that Mac was in.
Mac was pretty consensus at best QB4.
By the way, if Drake May didn't commit to UNC, he was going to be the successor, not Bryce Young.
Like, I would say pretty comfortably, like, Mac Jones, people were really impressed, but everybody had the pretty similar approach of very smart kid, accurate, but probably limited. I mean, there's a reason why he went QB5.
Non-athletic, doesn't have a strong arm.
Right, he didn't have the athletic upside. You were banking on his.
He was my QB3. Like, I had T-Law, Lance, Mack, Wilson, Fields. I absolutely hated Fields, and it has panned out to be exactly that.
I think we all still, I mean, I can't speak for JR, but I think that Matt and I share our equal disdain for Fields.
Yeah. But anyways,
it's funny. I'm gonna go back and see if I can find.
if you search in our messages, probably we could deep dive into it. But back to the kind of the main topic of it all. Like
I'm taking Fields over
Drake
Mac
May
any
and
day, though, still.
Daniels,
Don't care.
Drake May and Daniels, in I would say over 50% of drafts would be QB1s. They're not like your typical QB2 in a draft, and they're certainly not your typical QB3. They're very, very strong QBs in this draft. Which goes back to the main topic, is if the Patriots view them as that, take them. If you don't, if May sits there at 3 or Daniel sits there at 3, and then you don't, and they're like, you know what, we like him, but we don't love him. We think he has too many holes in his game. Sure, then do something else. And I won't go on the tangent, but if they don't want a quarterback, they unequivocally should trade back from number 3.
All right. I'm going to make my take on this because I was reading an article and stuff like that before we came on, everything like that. And I want to talk like somebody that I'm in a chat with. Shout out Josh, aka Madre the G. I think he tweeted at you. You might have seen it. The thing with Jacksonville and Brandon Ayuk. Jacksonville wanted, or San Francisco wanted 17 and a player for Brandon Ayuk in this year's draft. Would you do this? 25 first, Juju Smith-Schuster for Brandon Ayuk. You keep your second round pick this year. You get your quarterback at 3. You get your franchise left tackle at 34. You have your wide receiver 1 with next year's draft capital, and you can still get another receiver in this draft, and you can double dip a tackle. And you can get your tight end. You can get a running back.
It's the fact that it's next year's pick is certainly more attractive, but no.
I do it in a heartbeat.
And I don't want to I don't want it to be seen that if they did that, I would be excited. I would be excited because you're getting a really good wide receiver. But knowing where this team probably is next year, even if they added Ayuk and May has a solid rookie year, you're talking about a top 15 to 17 pick at worst. Realistically, this team is at best, in a great scenario, a team that fights for the wild card next year.
All right. What I'm saying is you get Ayuk, you extend him, you have your number 1 receiver for the next 5 to 7 years. You have a quarterback on a rookie deal.
And that's why I get it. I'm not afraid to trade for these guys. I'm not. I'm not afraid to trade for Ayuk. I'm not afraid to trade for Higgins. My biggest thing is I really would not give up a future first with it, knowing where this team is. And I would probably, if they put it on the table in front of me and I could hit accept, I would consider 34. But there is, for as much as what we would have a rookie QB, there's such a dip in value in the idea that, yeah, you trade for the guy, but you got to pay him $25-26 million a year now.
And that's fine. That's fine. I would rather pay a wide receiver $25 million than have to pay a middle of the pack quarterback $40 million.
Yeah.
And not have a good receiving core.
It really boils down to where you put Higgins in the grand scheme of things. Because if you want a legitimate wide receiver on this roster, you're going to have to pay 25-ish a year on a contract, right? So, and I know Matt and I have talked about this off record, that he personally doesn't believe that Higgins is a solidified wide receiver 1 worthy of mid-20s a year. So I'm a little higher on Higgins. And
he's a fringe.
And he to me, is he, when you talk about legit wide receiver 1, I would say he's certainly knocking on the door.
Fringe, yes.
So yeah, I'm saying I agree with you. So yeah. the thing with Higgins is, if you really think that he can be a legitimate 1, is it worth the $25 million a year? right? And they certainly have the
It
space
also
to
comes
pay.
down to what you think of these guys that it could potentially be there at 34.
Correct. So in a vacuum, and I know, and Matt and I talked about this too. In a vacuum, would you rather have T. Higgins at the cost of the 34th overall pick plus a $4 to $25 million a year deal, or would you take, you know, in an ideal world? I mean, I don't think that I don't think AD Mitchell is going to be there. So you're probably like, do you do that, or do you consider moving up for a Brian Thomas Jr. or an AD Mitchell, or do you sit there at 34 and if you're sitting there at 34, you're probably, and I don't want to say left with because I really like his upside, but you're probably left with Lad McConkey. He's probably the guy that will. He's probably your. Excuse me.
McConkey's going top 30.
He's probably your. He's probably the guy sitting there at 34, unless you're going to trade up for Brian Thomas or AD Mitchell.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like McConkey could go above Mitchell. They could both go top 30. And like, obviously you have to factor in. You have to obviously factor in like the concept of if you're saying would I rather Mitchell or Higgins? And if I rather Mitchell, then I might need to trade up. So then if I need to trade up, what does that cost on top of 34, obviously.
It's it's probably 34 and
maybe a future fourth or fifth.
A mid-round pick in 2025.
I don't know.
It depends. Well, it depends on how high you're going, right? If you're talking about going up to 22 or 23 with Philly, or at the moment either Philly or Minnesota, you're talking probably a
future second,
34, and either a second or a third. If you're trying to move up and say say Mitchell falls and he's sitting there at 30, and you call Baltimore, you probably don't need to give up more than a fourth rounder to move up from 34 to 30. You probably
give up 34 and 108.
You put that's probably even too high. Like value wise, to go up from 34 historically, of course, to go up from 34 to like 27 should only cost you about a future fourth round pick.
Or how about this?
Real quick,
34 into the sixth rounder that Jacksonville gave you.
Real quick, what year was
that
Lamar
will get
Jackson?
you?
What year was Lamar Jackson
30,
drafted?
31, 32. You might need to do a fifth.
What year was Lamar drafted?
2019. The N'Keal Harry draft.
So, for example, the year that the Patriots took Kyle Duggar, they traded back, I believe it was 23 to 37.
Oh, wait, no, 2018, because we passed on him twice.
Okay, so the Patriots traded back, I believe it was 23 to 37, and they got the Chargers' third round pick. Now, that's 23 to 30. Yes. Like, that's I don't know. That's a shit ton of picks.
Okay, so you ready?
16 picks.
So the trade up for Lamar. That's why I asked about Lamar, because that was moving up into the late first. So the Ravens gave up their second and their fourth, which at the time were the 52nd and 125th overall picks. So they traded 52 and 125 to move up 20 picks. They went from 52 to 32, and they also got the 132nd pick overall. So they traded 52 and 125 for 32 and 132. All
right, so hold on. I'm pulling this up right now because I had talked about with someone with this. In 2022, the Bucs traded 35, a fourth, and a sixth to move up to 27.
That was right. What year was that?
2022. I don't know who they went and got, but off the top of my head. But they traded 35, a fourth, and a sixth to move up 8 spots. In 2020, the Patriots traded 23 for 37 and 71. That was 14 picks.
So it was the Jaguars, not the Bucs. The Jaguars traded up with Tampa, not the other way around. So the Jaguars traded 33, 106, and 180, and Tampa gave them 27. So they got, what's pick 106? An early third?
It's a fourth.
Was it Devin? It was Devin Lloyd. That was the Devin Lloyd pick, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I didn't specify in the post because I didn't feel like going back and looking at it, but it was a 4th and a 6th round pick to move up 8 spots. And so like if you're sitting with the Patriots at 34 and you want to get up to 27, which is Arizona, right before Buffalo picks, right before Baltimore picks, KC picks, 3 teams that could go wide receiver, you would realistically only need to give up probably a 4th round pick. They gave up a 4 or a 6 to move up 8 spots. So, one less pick is probably a 4th and maybe a 7th.
Yeah, well, if
So
you're gonna move from 34 to 27, I would be fine with giving up
a future 4th.
You'd have to give up more than that.
They just gave up a 4 or the 6 to move up 8 spots. You're moving up 7, so maybe a 4th and a 7th. And again, like it's a little different. Every draft's different,
right?
It's
a solid comp for the Pats to move up with Arizona.
Correct. And so to go back to obviously the main topic is okay. And we don't even know the exact price on Higgins. But if we just put in the concept just 34, it's okay. Would I rather Higgins in a $25 million a year contract? And it's tough to gauge that versus the concept of like if the Patriots use that money elsewhere, because they might not. But you still got to value that $25 million.
Yeah, I
guess technically allocated elsewhere,
and it surely wouldn't prohibit them from spending it elsewhere because it's not like they have like $30 million in cap space and they're taking a large chunk of it. Yes,
correct.
Half of it would go to and it probably wouldn't even be half because the way they structure deals, the first year of that deal, the cap space would be marginal.
Yeah, and so like I said, it's tough to like gauge exactly what they would use the money elsewhere. But I talked about this online with a few people when people were saying just trade for Higgins, don't go for Ridley. And I'm saying I would significantly rather Calvin Ridley and a Donnie Mitchell or one of the top tackles in the top of the 2nd round over just T. Higgins, like in a heartbeat. In an absolute heartbeat.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's a little bit tough to gauge like how that they would spend the money differently that they don't spend on Higgins. But like if I'm looking at the Patriots and I'm like, okay, it would take 34 and a 4th, and I can go get a Donnie Mitchell or God forsake Brian Thomas Jr. falls into the low 20s. Like rookie contracts are huge in this league. And what's worse in this league? Overpaying players. And not that Higgins isn't good, but like the idea of having the idea of having to give up the 34th pick in a loaded wide receiver draft and tackle draft to significant positions of needs and give him $25 million a year. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I don't know if that is the best path for them. That being said, and I've posted this about it as well. I don't think the Bengals will get that. I really don't. If he's truly on the market, that they will get a significantly high 2nd.
Would you trade 68 and next year's 3rd instead of 34?
So that's what I was saying. So I think that they could maybe get a mid to late 2nd, which is. It doesn't sound a big difference, but yeah, I mean, like the 52nd pick and the 34th pick are significantly different values.
Well, here,
now.
This is where they hang up the phone, laugh, and say, "Okay, we're going to tag him again next year," or highest.
But they won't. They won't. They're not tagging him next year. They got to give these guys huge signing bonuses next year. Both of them, huge signing bonuses. They're not tagging Higgins again.
So that's
and never mind the fact that Higgins might not fucking play for them this year.
Well, the other thing too, though, isn't there a sliding scale when you tag now that in the new CBA? Isn't there a sliding scale if you tag players and the same player back-to-back years?
Yeah, it's 120% of.
Yeah, the salary goes higher, 120%.
Yeah, it didn't used to be. It didn't used to be that. Like, I mean, again, not to go off on a tangent, but how many years in a row did the Patriots tag Adam Vinatieri before they finally let him walk out the door?
Yeah,
and because back then there were no penalties for repeatedly tagging the same guy year after year after year, and now there are penalties if you do the non-exclusive franchise tag on the same guy in multiple seasons.
Yeah, they're not tagging Higgins again, but
No.
I mean, like, I think, and it obviously whether he's willing to play on the tag in the long run, and since he's really willing to trade him, that's a whole different topic. But if it comes to the point where they're like, we need to trade him, I don't think that they get 34. So if I'm sitting here and I'm the Pats and I say, I'll give you 68, which is a significantly high third, obviously, and next year's third, those two values in and of itself is what, a mid-second at worst? Like what would, like
I mean,
if
I
you
don't
traded 68
It's
in
a mid to
a
late second.
if you traded 68 in their future third, you can move up to at least the mid 50s. At
Yeah,
least
yeah,
probably the low 50s.
it's probably it would to go from 68, up to, somewhere right around 50 would cost you the following year's third round pick in all likelihood.
Yeah. And so that value is like a mid-second round pick. And at that point, it's a completely different ball game. At that point, okay, I would say, we can keep 34. And at that point, the Patriots could slide down from 34 and regain picks for next year to help, regain what you gave up in future picks.
Yeah.
And then it's a lot more doable. Then you have Higgins, let's say you have Drake May, and then you have 34 that even if you slid down from 34 into the 40s, let's say, and added a future fourth, like you're looking at, you could still get a really good tackle in the mid-second probably. Or hell, you could double dip at wide receiver still.
Yeah,
Maybe it gets there, or I think Worthy's going to end up going top 40 probably, and maybe we'll get to. But then you look in and you got a shit ton of other options at wide receiver too.
Johnny Wilson, Jamari Thrash,
or how like we're not
Brendan
even.
Rice.
I've been pushing
Washington.
the concept of like you need to not assume offense like nonstop. Like even if they traded back into they don't even have to add for the future picks. They could then trade from 34 and get a fourth this year. Like I think the comp that I usually do is I think it's the Colts or the Raiders in the early 40s, and then they can add a pick in like the early 100s, like 109, 110 range, and then you get another shot, something like that. This
is what I would do. I like T. Higgins a lot. I wouldn't mind trading for him, but because of the scheme and the system that the Patriots plan on running and everything like that, and what they're looking like at quarterback, if it's Drake May, you kind of want to get a player that is really good playing the middle of the field. It's Brandon Ayuk.
I know, but I'm not giving up a first round pick. And
I know. I'm just gonna be an honest question. Like, I know you don't like him as much, but why do you undervalue him more than you do T. Higgins?
No, I arguably think Ayuk is maybe better than T. Higgins. I would put him at the same level, if not maybe higher than T. Higgins.
Then I'm giving up.
I would consider 34, and I would give up 2/3 for Ayuk.
The thing is, they want a first rounder. San Francisco wants a first rounder minimum.
I'm not giving up a first for T. Higgins either.
Okay, so if this was the trade, because like I said, what they wanted from Jacksonville was a first and a player.
I'm not doing it.
All right. So if you had to eat the dead cap from Juju, and you gave up a 25 first, you got your wide receiver one with an extension the next 5 to 7 years, quarterback on a rookie deal, that's your franchise quarterback for the next 10, 15 years, however long, and you kept 34, and you kept most of your draft capital for this year, and only lost your first round next year when you can easily trade back up for a first round pick next year. You wouldn't do it.
What do you mean?
You're
not easily trading back up.
San Francisco is not taking a 2025 first in Juju Smith-Schuster.
I'm saying they want a player.
Well, I think that they would in the end. If you offered them a 25 first, I mean, you got to think that the Patriots would be what? They're going to be it's going to be a mid first next year.
It's going to be a 10 to 15 first rounder.
They're not going to get a team to give a top 20 pick this year for Ayuk. They're not. They're absolutely not.
That's why the Jaguars didn't do it.
Yeah,
but a future first
again. So I want to make it clear, like if they did that trade, am I going to be throwing a hissy fit over the concept? No. because we got a legit wide receiver. He's young, he's good, and we paid him, and he's here for the long term. But like, just in terms of how this team is structured in the future, I'm not giving up a future first for a guy that I also have to pay as a top 15 wide receiver in football.
Cap's going up though, so his deal now
know,
won't look
but-
as big as in 3 to 4 years from now.
He wants minimum 25, probably 26 to 27.
And guess what? That $25 million is going to look like a Nelson Aguilar deal in 3 to 4 years.
Maybe
will.
by the end of it, not 3 to 4. It might look like 18 to 19.
Well, the cap's going to go up again within the next 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, but it trickles down, but it's not going to go down to like 11. What was like 11 for Aguilar?
14 million.
So
like 11 for Aguilar 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was like 14 now.
So take this with a grain of salt, but based on comps, Spotrac has his projected future contract at $496, which is $24 million a season.
Yeah, he's getting above that.
It's probably more than that. I mean, obviously, it really depends on like if T. Higgins, like what he gets in a future deal, is going to have a lot to do with that. Same thing with
like Jefferson. When Jefferson signs, if Chase signs,
when Justin Jefferson signs his next deal, he's going to break records for wide receiver.
He's going to get $35 million a year at least.
He might get more. He might get 40.
Yeah, no.
But, and we can we can
He's
wrap
not
up
getting,
kind of
he's
there.
not getting 40 a year.
I wouldn't be.
We say this
shocked,
now, but we were wrong about Kirk Cousins.
No, I wasn't.
Yeah, give me my goddamn bobblehead.
All I said was
I'll
he
buy
was
you it,
going
I
to
will.
get 2 years, $80 million, and he didn't. So
Oh, shut up.
I rest my
Ben's
case.
playing the
He got over
technicality.
$100 million.
But did he get a 2-year, $80 million deal? The answer is no.
Yeah, but he
Shut
got
up.
significantly more guaranteed money.
No, Ben's playing the technicality because he didn't sign exactly a 2-year, $80 million deal.
That's right.
But
I said
Yeah,
I
well-
would buy you a case of High Noons if he signed a 2-year, $80 million deal.
to be fair, I cut that clip specifically. The general concept was a multi-year deal at $40 million a year. We just like specified because it was we felt like 2 years is probably the most likely.
We didn't feel like he was going to get a 3 or a 4-year deal.
Well, the thing is, Kirk Cousins is like the Tom Brady of getting money out of franchises. Like
Cousins
this man
bet on
walks in with
himself.
like a C4 strapped to his chest and is like, "You give me the money, or like I'm gone."
Yeah. But anyways, I mean, we'll leave it at that. We got through essentially 2 topics. We did absolutely everything that I wanted to do. But
Well, the title was
I-
what they're going to do at 3, and we discussed Drake May.
We-
We
We did.
we transitioned to
And-
the wide receiver in 34 and stuff like that.
And to be fair, there's
Um,
not a ton to talk about, although the Bruins are in first place in the Eastern Conference, so they're in a good spot. I will ask JR one question briefly. Do you agree or disagree with the Bruins' decision to try to trade Linus Ullmark? Understanding he blocked the deal, so it didn't happen. But what was your immediate gut reaction when you found out that they were trying to actively ship Linus Ullmark out of town?
They were going to free up cap space to go get Elias Lindholm.
So would you have figured out, because and here's a second question. What is Ullmark's no trade? Is it partial or full?
Partial.
Full no trade becomes partial after this year.
Okay, so it's
No, I
a
thought it
current
was
full
partial.
no
No,
trade.
right now.
it's full no trade right now.
Okay.
Becomes partial in the summer.
Okay, because the reason I was going to ask is if it was a partial no trade, why would the Bruins not have figured out a trade with somebody who was not on the partial no trade list? That was my only question, was how you felt about.
He told them, he said, this is what he said before in the past. If it was for the better part of the team, and he got like, it had to have been like amazing deal for not only the Bruins but also for him, he would waive his no trade clause.
So he probably just didn't like didn't like the.
He has a 16 team no trade list in 2023 and 2024.
That's not a partial then. That's a full wouldn't be to all other to all other 2019.
Yeah, a full no trade is I can veto any trade. Partial is.
So I guess my question would then
percentage.
become: if the Bruins were really trying to trade Ullmark, why would they just not? Why would they just?
Well,
Why would they not try to trade him to somebody who's not on the no trade list?
there's probably only 2, 3, 4 teams that are possibilities that are looking
Also
for
trying to do right
goalies.
by the player as well.
I
You
mean,
don't want
that's
to
yeah,
sit there
like,
with
there's
shit
no reason to
team.
not do. There's no reason to not do right by him. But anyway, I was just
yeah,
curious.
but like
we
you
don't
have to. We
dive
don't
down the
know
rabbit hole.
like of the teams that they could have traded him to. Like what
It
teams
was
were
Jersey and
interested.
LA that called.
Yeah. But
And I'm
anyways,
guessing they were both on his no trade.
I don't know
I don't know
exactly,
the
but
list. They don't have
I
the
want to say
teams
the
listed.
Devils weren't, but I'm not sure. But anyways, hey, let's finish it up with state your take. I don't know if you guys thought of yours this week. I almost forgot. But do you guys have yours ready to go?
I could think of one,
No?
but let me
All right,
give me like 2
I'll
seconds to
start.
think of one.
I'll start.
You
I'll
go
start us
first.
off. And I'll say it. I said it to Ben in private. I sit there and look at this 34th pick, and I just think that they're going to do something with it. I would be, if a month from now or 5 or 6 weeks from now, if they use the 34th pick in its spot, I don't know why, but I'm going to be surprised. Whether they trade it for a player, whether they trade up, whether they trade down, I just feel like they're going to trade that pick because, as we talked about, that's my dog. There's a lot of options for them to maybe move up for a receiver, and if one doesn't fall, that they move down for an extra pick or something like that.
Okay. For me, just because what I can come up with, I probably could have saved this for like another month as we lead into the NFL draft. I'll go ahead and say that your offensive rookie of the year will not be one of the top 3 quarterbacks taken in the draft. And I say that
Okay.
because
I mean, it's very possible.
And I say this only because currently, my personal overall first round mock draft has Minnesota moving up from 11 to 5 because there's a fear that JJ goes to 6, which means they have to go to 5 if they want McCarthy. And I think given the situation that McCarthy finds himself in Minnesota with those weapons, I think if Minnesota drafts JJ McCarthy is your 2024 offensive rookie of the year.
That's pretty. That part. I didn't think you were going that route. I thought you were going to go and this is why I thought you were going to say is they trade up to 4 and take McCarthy, and then Marvin Harrison falls into the lap of being Justin Herbert's main target. Now that not that Kyle is a bum, but that immediately, like, you put Herbert into LA with that QB, all of a sudden you could have a pretty monstrous rookie year.
Yeah.
That being said, Puka Nacua had a pretty damn good year this year, but if you're a QB and you have a good year, you're going to win it over the wide receiver. But go ahead, JR, what's yours?
Mine's going to be unique. Mine's going to be really unique. It's not going to be anything Patriots related. I'm going defense. I'm going defense with this. It's an NFL. It's going to be an NFL player after this draft. But your defensive rookie of the year next year, it's going to be Chop Robinson.
Okay. Where's your guess that he ends up?
Where do I think he's ending up? If I had, who's an edge needy team? Who's a team?
I don't think he's a first round pick.
He's been falling out of the first round.
He might slide. In. I mean, you could see like maybe see Baltimore at the end of the first. Or you could see Washington in the early second.
I was gonna say this. Washington just lost Sweat, they just lost Sweat, and they lost and Chase Young. I think he's the best edge prospect in this draft, and everybody knows how high I am on Jared Verse, being a Florida State fan. I think Chop Robinson is going to be the best defensive player taken in this draft.
So NFL Tankathon has Chop Robinson 29 to Detroit.
That would be, oh my god, dude, that would be nuts.
Which would make him the second, fourth
Third or
edge,
fourth edge.
fourth edge guy. They have Turner 8 to Dallas to Atlanta, Verse 14 to the Saints, and then they have Latu 19 to the Rams.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, I it's bold. I like it. He's seems to be a little bit of a polarizing guy at the edge.
I'm a huge Penn State defensive player fan. I have been for a long time, and I just think it's going to happen.
One thing that I've noticed with this first round is I'm having a real hard time at edge and cornerback deciding who is the top guy and how to rank them among. It's in part because like I'm not digging incredibly deep into them because I know the Patriots aren't going into them. But
you want to know the top corner in this draft? I'll tell you right now. It's going to be Khalid McKinstry. I think Terry Arnold's a dog, but it's going to be Khalid McKinstry. And I think Cooper DeJean right after him.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. We'll leave it at that. This might be the longest pod we've done, but we'll be back next week. To say the least, there was we got a few hundred people that came in the room and listened to us tonight. We'll be back next week. I'm hoping to maybe get a Red Sox guest next week to talk some preseason predictions and all type of that stuff. Hopefully, at this point, we'll have a little bit more Patriot signings and all that. But until then, we'll be back next week in sometime for another live show.
Get Milliken.
That would be pretty sweet. I don't know. He's starting up their pod is going to be announced soon, so their new one after leaving DraftKings. So, all right. Until next week, take care.
Have a good night.
All right, man. You guys